Hello, this is me smiling for two reasons. Firstly, I have just been married, and secondly, I sewed my own wedding outfit. As you may have thought by now, it's an alternative approach. It's a fuchsia set of a bustier and tuxedo trousers. Today, I will show you step by step how I sewed both of them. Beginning from the fabric, it's a satin douceuse acetate. The right side is a silk touch soft pink and the wrong side is a textured fuchsia. And I used them vice versa. So this pattern doesn't have any pockets. It has a normal fitting, it has a facing, and it has a side zipper, an invisible one. The front part cut in two pieces and the back one. And then the facings, they are folded. That is why they are so small. And also you will need an invisible zipper. This one is 20 centimeters. I will sew it on the side seam, on one of the side seams, and also a matching thread. If, just like me, you can't find an exactly matching thread, it's always better to go for a darker one than one with a brighter shade. Transfer the darts from the pattern to the fabric and pin them so they are ready for sewing. I know that when I start sewing, I will start my stitch here and I will go all the way and finish it here. Now, if this is not easy enough, you can also draw your dart following the marks from the pattern to the fabric, but please make sure that you use a light pencil and leave as light marks on your fabric as possible. So what I've done here is to try and end this stitch as smoothly as possible, and I did not back stitch it because I want this to be a really smooth surface, and I'm gonna make sure that you have long edges, so I'm gonna use the edges and I'm gonna hand comb. I'm gonna do a double hand comb to secure my stitch. And it looks like this on the right side. Match the two front parts by placing the one on the other, right sides facing inside, pin and sew. Repeat the same steps for the back parts as well. This mark from here to here is to add the zipper. So now we won't need this extra fabric for both parts. So I will remove it. As you might have imagined by now, this is the side seam that a zipper won't be added. So that makes it this side, the side with the zipper. So we are going to the non-zipper side, which we are pinning and sewing. So now that I have sewed this part, I'm gonna proceed to the inside, to the inner seams, and I'm gonna start pinning and sewing. Next, we will work on the facing. Important information not shown here is that firstly you have to add fusing to both facing parts. Place the two parts one on the other, right sides facing inside. Pin and sew only the side that won't have the zipper. If you are not sure which side this is, pin the facing on the trousers to check. I think my trousers on the right side. I'm gonna place the facing and pin it, and I'm gonna sew. I'm gonna add an invisible zipper. Just so you know, I have a detailed video step by step on how to sew an invisible zipper. I will do it again here, but if you need further instructions, please check this video. I will leave the link below. First, I'm gonna open the zipper. Now, the zipper is at the right side looking up, and my trousers too are on the right side. So, I'm gonna flip it, and I'm gonna start pinning it at the beginning of the waist seam. The beginning of the zipper is my waist seam, and the edge of the zipper is also the edge of my fabric. And now I'm gonna sew it. The secret is to sew it as close as possible to the edge, to the teeth. Now, I wasn't able to finish the sewing to the bottom, so I will close the zipper and I will return to this piece and sew it. Now for the other side of the zipper, I'm looking at the back part. I am flipping again the zipper. Again, starting from the waist seam and working my way. Now the end of the zipper is going to be a little tricky because we have already sewn the other side.
Sometimes it helps if you flip the trousers again inside out and you work on the wrong side.
So now I have a clear vision of the end of the zipper. So I'm going to close it to make sure that it is even. Taking my facing as well. Okay, it is even. And I'm going to open it again and sew. I have pressed it. I have pressed all seams inside and outside. I have also pressed this point here so as to really be an invisible zipper.
Turn the trousers one more time inside out.
Pin and sew the other side seam. So we begin after the zipper. We fold the zipper and we place a pin right here. This is because we want our seam to reach until this point, so it would prevent the end of the zipper to slip inside on the right side of the fabric.
And then we pin all the way down and we sew.
So I would like to show you this stitch right here. Following my seam allowance, I stitch keeping 1 centimeter seam allowance here, and I did the same here, and I had to do a corner to meet those two stitches. My zipper opened. I'm gonna fold the facing, iron it, and I'm gonna fold it inside. I'm gonna pin it. This is what it should look like. And now I am gonna turn it.
This is what it looks like on the inside. I have flipped it and transferred the pins from the right side to the wrong side, because this side we will look while sewing.
And now when we turn it on the right side again, it should look like this. I'm gonna do it on the other side too. Say hello to Lilo. Hi there. I have folded the facing inside and pressed it, and I'm gonna make one top stitch here at the front seam.
I'm gonna do the top stitch because I wanted to hold the facing inside and not flipping outside. I'm gonna do the same with the side seam and with the back seam. The last thing to do is to iron and hand sew the hem. I would suggest to try and sew as little of the right side as possible so that threads won't be visible. You can always sew the hem using a machine, but personally I found that this look doesn't match tailored trousers. These are all the bustier parts cut. All patterns are cut both on main fabric and on lining. The only exception is pattern A, which is cut 4 times only on main fabric. We start by matching patterns B and C together, right sides facing inside and sew. Then we do a top stitch on the outer side of the cap. Repeat for the other side and make sure that the 2 stitches are mirroring. Match the pattern 1 to the cap, pin and sew. Then repeat the top stitch on the upper part of the cap. We will leave the caps at the side for now and start working on the body. Take patterns D and E. Match the E to the D, pin and sew. Seam allowance here is 1.5 centimeters. To make it easier, you may need to mark it before sewing. Repeat for the other E. Do a top stitch that matches the caps above. Now bring the pattern F, match only one of them to the side and sew, again at 1.5 centimeters. Now bring pattern G, match it to the body next to the F, pin and sew. Again, seam allowance is 1.5 centimeters for these 2 pieces. F and G, do a top stitch on the right side as we did before. Now, take the other pattern F, attach it to the free side of G and pin. This is our zipper side. This zipper is a regular one. Again, if you need further help, a detailed video tutorial on how to sew a zipper is available and I will leave the link below. Sew at 2 centimeters. Open the seam and press. For this project, a separating zipper is required. In my case, the zipper is longer than the seam, so adjustments need to be made. Mark on the zipper where the seam ends. Open the zipper, flip it so that the right side faces the body and pin, leaving 1 centimeter seam allowance from the hem. I find it easier to pin and sew first the one side and then the other. Note that the zipper needs to be semi-close. Then, using a thread-cutting scissors, open the stitch. Top stitch both sides. Repeat the sewing procedure for the cap lining. As we said earlier, pattern A is cut out of the main fabric instead of lining. In this tutorial, we will add foam caps. However, you can sew it without. Just follow the steps and skip these pieces. To assemble the foam caps, we will follow the same steps as with the fabric. The only difference is that foam patterns don't include seam allowance. To sew them, place parts B and C together, switch your stitch to zigzag, use the widest step possible, and sew them together as the needle jumps from one piece to the other. As the pieces move under the needle, use your hands to push them close to avoid any gaps. Check the sewing result and repeat one more time if necessary. Then proceed to adding the upper part to the foam cap. Back to assembling the caps, firstly match the main fabric and the lining, right sides facing inside. If you're using foam cap, add it to the top of the lining. Pin and sew the upper side. Now is the time to add the bias tape to hold all layers together in a neat finish. Firstly, pin the one side as sewn and sew. Check how the bias tape is folded in its beginning and end. Then fold it, pin again, and sew looking at the right side. Try keeping this seam allowance as narrow as possible. This stitch will be hidden, so we want to make it as close to the edge and less than 1 cm. Now let's proceed with the lining. Assemble the lining to match the fabric. The right way to do it is to lay down the body right side looking up as a reference while you assemble piece by piece the lining. Let me show you the wrong way to do it. If you lay the body with the wrong side looking up and use this as a reference, you will assemble the lining in the wrong order, and you will realize it only when it's too late. Now let's proceed with the boning. Again, it's optional, so if you don't want to use boning, you can skip this step. So basically the idea is to slide the boning inside the tunnel made from the top stitches. You may need to cut it narrower to fit into, so when buying, make sure you choose one that is easy to cut. I propose to measure all of the tunnels and pre-cut the boning. Remember to cut it shorter by 2 cm, our seam allowances on top and bottom of the bustier. After many trials and errors, I believe that the easiest way is to first sew and assemble the main fabric with the lining. So place them together, right sides facing inside, and sew only the bottom side. Now slide the boning inside. Make sure you push all the way to meet the bottom. And now sew the top side. Turn the body inside out and press. Next, we will sew close the lining and zipper. If you're using a longer zipper like me, first mark where you want it to stop. Don't cut yet. We need to secure that the puller will stop and won't slide its way out of the zipper. You can use metal stops or just hand sew some stitches to create a stopper. In both cases, first check that it works and then cut the zipper, adding 2 to 3 cm for seam allowance. Slide the seam allowance between the lining and main fabric, pin and sew. And the body is complete. Well done, guys! We are almost there. Here comes the final and maybe the most important part, adding the caps. Firstly, pin the caps to the body, then hand sew. Create stitches narrow enough to keep the cap in place but wide enough so that they can be easily removed. Use contrast color to make tracking easier. Use the hand sewing as a guide and go over it using a sewing machine. If you find this step too difficult, just hand sew them, but make it pretty. And that's it! Your bustier is complete! You saw me wearing it with spaghetti straps. That is an optional addition that you can add too. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you enjoyed sewing both the trousers and the top, and that you will wear them on many happy moments. Follow my channel for more sewing projects and tips, and we will meet again on the next project.